Right, we move from testings to temptations, verses 12 to 18. First of all, in regard to man, and then in regard to God. As the notes indicate, the same word is used for trials in verse 2 as in verse 12, perosmos. And the same stem is employed for the verb tempted in verse 13. The same word is used for trials and temptations. The context usually indicates which is in view. And as we said before, testings can become temptations. That's what you have here. All right, verse 12. Blessed, Makarios. The word is sometimes translated happy. Same word you have in the Beatitudes. Makarios, blessed, blessed, blessed. It's not eulogetos, it's Makarios, blessed. The word sometimes is translated happy, but that doesn't really carry it. You find it. Happy are the poor in spirit. You've heard, excuse me. You've heard people say, how to be happy, the Beatitudes, how to be happy. Well, that's not what the Beatitudes are all about. Happy are the poor in spirit. Happy are those who mourn. Well, that dog won't hunt. What it really means is happiness in the sense of congratulations. It would be far better to translate it, congratulations. Congratulations to the poor in spirit. Why? Because theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Congratulations to those who mourn. Why? Because they will be comforted. Congratulations to the meek. Why? They will inherit the land. Congratulations, and so on. And so here, it would be better to take the idea, congratulations to the man who perseveres under trial. That's the idea. That's the point. By the way, you'll notice again, the congratulations for the person who perseveres. It's not just having the trial, but it's for enduring it. Persevering through it. Now, blessed are the poor in spirit, because same construction as you have the Beatitudes. As I said before, James often reflects the Sermon on the Mount. You can see the same thing here. Blessed is the person. Why? Because once he's been approved, he'll receive the crown of life. What we mean by crown of life. Well, let's take crown first of all. The word crown here is Stephanos, Stephen. Anybody named Stephen in here? How many people are named Stephen? Yeah, that's a common name, Stephen. Beautiful name. Means crown. Usually a victor's crown. Not always a victor's crown. Sometimes it can have the idea of authority. If you want some illustrations of it not being a victor's crown, put here Revelation 6:2, chapter 9, verse 7. But normally it's the idea of the crown that's given to a person victorious in one of the Olympics, one of the races, and so on. It's the victor's crown. Well, if it's a victor's crown, and probably that's what you have here, it's crown of life. Have you ever stopped to think of what that means? To receive a crown of life. What is that? Probably this is an appositional genitive. Now, Greek students, explain to me what I mean by an appositional genitive. What does that mean? Go ahead.
It's saying the crown and life are the same thing.
Yes. Life explains what crown is. The crown, which is life. I take it as an appositional genitive. The life explains what the crown is. The crown, which is life. Now, the reason I say that is given to all who love the Lord. So all Christians are going to receive this, the crown of life. Now, you have to think of this like a Jew. Have you ever seen Fiddler on the Roof? Remember the song talks, life, life, kind, life, life. So that's what you have here, the celebration of just life and the fullness of life. So that in eternity, we're not just going to be a breathing mass of spiritual beings. We're going to be full of genuine, what life is all about, the fullness of life. That's what I think he means. We'll receive the crown of life. You endure, be a crown of life which the Lord gives to those who believe, who love the Lord. Let me finish out, and I know there'll be questions on this, so let me move on, and then we'll open it up. Verse 13, let no one say when he is tempted, I'm being tempted by God. Now you'll notice that James, throughout the book, has a strong emphasis on the sovereignty of God. He's strong in this. You're born again by God's will, etc. Strong emphasis on God's will. Don't say we're going to go in such a city and make a profit. Say, if the Lord wills. There's strong emphasis on the sovereignty of God. But not to the point where God tempts us. God does not tempt us. It's one area where God is not sovereign in leading us into sin. Not to the point of saying God tempts us. Because God can't be tempted. God can't be tempted. Why would he tempt us? That's the logic. God cannot be tempted. Why would he tempt us if he can't be tempted? Now that becomes a problem, and I'll just touch on this very quickly. That becomes a problem when you come to the temptation of Christ. Was Christ tempted? Well, yeah, he was tempted, but God can't be tempted. Well, this must be looking at his humanity. That's the only way I can explain this. Jesus is theanthropic. Just as God can't get weary, God doesn't sleep, Christ slept, and God doesn't get weary, and so on. God doesn't get hungry. The Lord Jesus as a man did. Probably that's what it's looking at. Now, verse 14. Here is a very interesting point. Don't say God tempts you, but each one is tempted when he is carried away and enticed by his own lust. Who is not mentioned as the source of temptation here? Satan's not mentioned. Isn't that interesting? Most of us think, if Satan would just leave me alone, I'd be okay. Ladies and gentlemen, face it. Most of us are so sinful, Satan doesn't have to bother with us. Really, that's what it's saying. We're enticed and drawn away by our own lust. That sin nature in us is so powerful that it's constantly working in us to make us sin. Satan isn't even mentioned. Very interesting story. Very interesting. You also notice the fishing terminology. Drawn out and enticed. It's the picture of a fish under a rock or in a bed of weeds. And that you put that lure out there, and the fish is drawn out from under the rock. And then he takes the bait. So he's drawn out and enticed to take that bait. Well, so it is. Sin works in us. It just lures us out. It's so enticing. So it just draws us out, and then we take the bait is what it is. Of course, he traces it from conception to birth to death. Desire conceives, bears sin. I don't think I have to go through that one. All right, so he deals with temptations in regard to man. They come from our own desires and lusts. Temptations in regard to man and temptations in regard to God. You notice the contrast on this sharp, sharp contrast. Do not be deceived, my beloved brethren. Every good and perfect gift comes from above. Look at the contrast. Sin does not come from God. Good and perfect gifts come from God. You got the point? It's obvious that there's a sharp contrast. Sin comes from ourselves, not from God. Then he goes on to say that God does not change. Every good and perfect gift comes from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there's no variation. I think he's saying there's no variation. Why is there in reference to God's immutability? By the way, what does immutability mean? Change, unchanging God. Great, great doctrine. God's immutable. And I think it means that the giving of good gifts is an unchanging characteristic of God. He just gives good gifts. Now, it's not just true of 2,000 years ago, it's still true today. Not true, it's true of 4,000 years ago, still true today. He's unchanging. He still gives good gifts. If you want a good illustration, put here Malachi 3:6, one of the outstanding passages on the immutability of God in the Old Testament. Malachi 3:6, where it says, we will not be consumed, we will not be destroyed, because God does not change. You think, whoa, what's the connection? Well, we will not be destroyed because God has not changed, because God gave promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that have to be fulfilled. So he does not change. Verse 18, and here's where we really hit it. Look at verse 18, students. What's the good and perfect gift that he's talking about that he gives us here? What's the good gift that he gives us? Huh? Salvation, regeneration. If you talk about good and perfect gifts, an illustration, a perfect illustration is regeneration. Instead of being a source of sin, it's the source of life. In the exercise of his will, by the way, notice again sovereignty. In the exercise of his will, he brought us forth. Jot down here John 1:13. John 1:13. Not by the will of man or the will of blood, but the will of God were we born again. He brought us forth. Same verb in verse 15. Brought us forth. Same verb. Sin brings forth death. Same verb. Brought us forth. Same verb. Now look at this carefully. In the exercise of his will, he brought us forth by the word of truth. The word of truth, ladies and gentlemen, is the gospel. It's the gospel. He brought us forth by the word of his truth. Hear me, students. People can't be saved without hearing the gospel. They'll never be saved without hearing the gospel. Remember, faith involves information. If they don't have the information, how can they be saved? So, students, teach the scriptures, yes. But with the teaching of the scriptures, be sure to give the gospel. Give the gospel. Give the gospel constantly. When you come to 2 Timothy 4:2, preach the word. We take that as being expository preaching, verse by verse, or as my sister says, verse by verse. With verse by verse. No, I'm committed to expository preaching. I mean, I've given my life to it. But preach the word does not mean expository preaching. It literally means herald the gospel, proclaim the gospel. And that's a banner. Put here, if you will, Romans 10:14 and 2 Timothy 4:2. 2 Timothy 4:2 and Romans 10:14. Louis Berry Chafer, I can still hear him saying, he was a tremendous phrase maker. And he would say, men, if you haven't given the people something to believe, you haven't preached the gospel. Just that simple. If you haven't given the people something to believe, you haven't preached the gospel. And that's so true. That's so true. One more thing, then I think we'll take a break. That we might be, as it were, the first fruits among his creatures. What that's saying is, one day, all creation will be God's. In the meantime, we're the first fruits. We're the first fruits. One day, all of creation is going to be the Lord's. We're just the first fruits at the time. It also implies that humanity is head over creation. You know, apes and animals ain't the same. That it implies we're the first fruits of all creation. We are the crown of God's creation.